Hello, and welcome to my book review of a leadership book. I have chosen the text How to Thrive as a Teacher Leader by John G. Gabriel. I chose this text because a lot of the literature that we're reading has to do with roles that we're going to have as an administrator, and not so many as in the current roles that we're in. Technically, the position that I'm taking as a special ed facilitator will be an administrator. But it's under a teacher contract. It's kind of in that gray area where I have influence, but not real power. So this is a book that kind of goes along those lines with how to navigate as a teacher leader versus an administrator like a principal or something. A lot of it starts off with just basic types of teacher leaders and roles and responsibilities as teacher leaders. That's kind of where the first chapter goes through. It talks about different things, even as simple as being like a timekeeper for different meetings and a school plan chair, a presenter, a number of different things, a building representative, just all the different roles that a teacher leader could have. Now, it was written through the lens of someone who was a department chair, so more in a high school role. It was in this scenario, it was through an English department, and basically what they've learned in turning around a school that was kind of struggling in the early parts of No Child Left Behind, and kind of what they did as teacher leaders to help facilitate the change. So again, the first one was a lot of the roles and responsibilities. Then they go to some of the qualities that teacher leaders should have. Some of those being good. Your principles need to be at heart. You need to be honest, intelligent. You need to be organized. You need to be resourceful was another one that they had talked about, and being able to use a lot of these different tools to your advantage. My administrator often says a simple thing that this book echoes, where she had said, my administrator says, well, I have influence, I don't have a lot of power. And I always respond to that, and I said, well, you can fire me. I said, so you have some power. I said, in the position that I'm taking, I don't have that. I said, you have power to over budget, you have power to do those different things. I have influence. I can say that this is kind of what they are. So that's kind of where my distinction is, and I was kind of more along the lines of what they are. Now, within a Cedar Rapids district, I can see where she would say that, but not, I kind of feel like this is more in line with what really happens. And I can see also, I guess, just her point. I'll stay on that just a little bit. In administrators, how she can say, or mine or any, can say that we have, or they have the ability to put forward different ideas, the ability to lead you to different ideas. But it's not until the teacher leaders, your rock stars, your superstars, take those and run with them till they really take hold. So she can influence by purchasing different things. She can influence by doing a lot of those different things. But until the teachers really adopt those types of things, you're not going to get the payout. And I think that's the lens that she uses for that. There's also, at the end of the chapter, they talked about a little bit about how when certain teachers in a building become in leadership roles, it breeds envy, and it can. Teachers, when you take these types of roles on, at least in my scenario, I'm taking it because I think it's the right thing to do, and I think I can have the most good. And my reward is not extrinsic; it's not anything. Being able to be a leader and affect change is my reward, and I think that's kind of how they framed how a lot of teacher leaders start. In that, listen, I'm not looking for that. I'm not trying to kiss up. I'm not trying to do anything. It's more I need to affect change. So there was a number of other information that I thought that wasn't really relevant to my situation because it was more focused on the high school, but it was good to see a perspective on it. But I'll focus more on what was relevant to me. Some of the great part that was of the next chapter talked about interviewing and getting the right person. Everything that I've been told from the administrators that I've worked with, it's really important to have the right person. That it's those things that you can't teach that you're really looking for in individuals, at least at an elementary level. You can work on a lot of the content areas and get them skills in that area, but it's really that person, the person that can build culture, that can, create a positive learning environment it is what's valued, at least from the administrators I've talked about. Now in this, they're talking about, high school, a high school where they're trying to reach a certain level, and a certain level of expertise within your content is something that you're going to need. and being highly qualified, and they talked about a hire that they had made within this within the person who wrote this, that the department chair wasn't part of the interviewing process and would probably not have chosen the candidate that they had, and it played out in a way where they didn't get a lot of the content that they needed, were often giving wrong answers to students, and that was kind of getting around and had to be addressed later, where they felt like if they were more part of the interviewing process early, then it would have been a non-issue at that point, because that person probably wouldn't have gotten hired. Our administrator tends to say, listen, if you'd like to be part of the team, she'll usually send out a blanket email. She strongly recommends whoever's going to work, like let's say a first grader's teacher's getting hired, that they would be on the team, the partner, because that's the person you're going to be working with. I've been part of the special ed interviews for my new position, so I understand that. There was some great information that I hadn't thought about as far as the hiring process and expanding the hiring pool, the applicant pool. They talked about one way to do it within your school is taking part as a teacher leader, taking part in having practicum students or student teachers, because once they're within the fabric of your school and they understand it, they're probably more likely to want a job there. Attending conferences, having professional memberships, having a great school website. So if you're a part of that, that's one of the first things they're probably going to look at when they say, oh, Garfield, well, let's click on the website and see what they have. And it's something appealing and something that looks great. At that point, you're window shopping, and maybe they would really, that first punch look that they'd have. Another one that they had talked about were about churches, bazaars, community events, and putting up flyers. Now that's this book was written in 2005, so that's I would doubt as much of an influence, but they talked about maybe having, someone who's a member of a church having a niece who just graduated and saying, oh yeah, we have a member, Miss Brian Meyer here, who works at Garfield. He says it's great. I think it'd be a great place for you to work. Maybe you'd think about doing that. So that word of mouth thing versus maybe like a flyer on the wall type of thing, more of that's all electronic now. And again, that's just kind of the direction it's probably moved since this book first came out. They also talked about some of the qualities that they look for in applicants initially. A high GPA, that's not probably something I would have looked at, but I can see where they're going that way. You'd have a high content knowledge probably. You'd show a good work ethic to maintain a high GPA. So I can see where that would be a piece of what you're looking at. In Cedar Rapids, we use a FIT score. So basically how fit your teacher is, it spits out a number at you. And if you don't hit a certain number, chances are you're probably not going to get an interview. So that's maybe where our GPA type would come in. Look for confidence, work ethic, open-mindedness, and leadership potential. That was one that was really good, where you can just if you get that sense of both on paper and from them talking that they would be looking for a leadership type potential. One other piece that I thought was really great advice, takeaways that I had from the interview: don't give too much away. If someone's giving you the right answer, don't, it's like, yeah, things like that. More of, okay, just kind of nod and keep things going so that you can really get at who that person is and they're not playing up to what you want to hear. Make sure you take detailed notes. This was one that I had on the last time. Just writing a description, tall man with a beard, nothing, to help you recall which person that was. Blonde hair, red dress, something like that to help you when you're all done, because a lot of times it'll take you a second to remember the names. And if you take a day or two to digest, oh yeah, that's who I was talking about when you're having that interview process. Now we take detailed notes. We do like a plus delta chart, and we have a good process with it, but this was another way to look at it. Another piece that they talked about in being a teacher leader was the communication piece, and using student-centered phrasing and questions, a lot of what we've talked about in class. Something versus saying, if you're talking with either a teacher or a student, I expect this out of you, centers around you, where you say, versus just the simple wording of saying, the expectation for this is blank. And then it's putting it on the student, this or the expectation at that point. This is the expectation. Not I'm saying it, it's what that is. It's a thing. And then the questions, there are some great stems that ask a teacher, how do you want to handle this? When vetting, where you'd say, what if this would happen? Where you've talked about going through those question stems, they echoed that as well. If someone asked you a tough question, do you, say, well, why do you ask that? Just getting to the heart of it. And if someone has a great initiative, didn't turn out so well, ask them. So what did you learn? There's no right answer in education. There's no universal answer. So what did you learn from this, and where can we go? They talked about holding meetings and vision and mission statement. We do a lot of that in our building, so I connected with some of that. Working with your administrator, this was awesome. They talked about picking which sword to fall on. That hit me hard. Which ideas would you be willing to risk everything for? Where you think, man, this is going to be great. You just need to give it time. You need to believe in it. Don't blindside your supervisor. To evolve, and above all, I thought this was good too. Make your superiors look good. Okay, if you're doing good things within your role and things are happening, that'll make your superior look good. That will look good on you. That will look good on the school. That will be beneficial for the students, which is the ultimate thing. Other things that relate to me, new initiative. I'm going to have to, our special ed in the district is having a new kind of push-in model for special education. Not that it's new, but more so in our district. And I'm going to be having to write something about it. That's going to be, I'm writing like a handbook on how we're going to do that. That is going to be a challenge because you're pushing something on right when you're taking a position. And here's a handbook for it, not a soft. And I'll try to figure out how to maybe do a soft rollout with it. But that's going to be a challenge. So they're saying, don't try new initiatives right away. Get in there and do it. But it's something that's from the top down, which I'm not going to be able to have anything with that right away. They talked about selling benefits on things like that. So if there is something like that you have to do, sell the benefits, not the proposal. Welcome disagreements with it. Okay, you disagree, have that, and diffuse threats. And for certain initiatives, if you can let someone else, a faculty, propose the change, like they used an example of SSR, where someone in their room had been doing it. Say, listen, would you mind presenting on SSR? I see you do it all the time and you're really having some good success. And then with them proposing it, then you would have, and the excitement, they talked about it became near unanimous at that point because one of their people had done it. They could really get behind it. They talked some about mediating conflicts, about how listening, just listen right away. Let me make an observation is a sentence stem that they said. And one that I really liked, they used co-teaching as a model. They're saying clarify roles and set goals. So within this teaching relationship, what are your roles? What do you have and where have we gone from that? And then set goals from there. They talked a lot about mapping the curriculum, data-driven instruction. And one other piece that I hadn't thought about that really stuck out with me was involving your guidance department. If you're having issues or concerns with students or anything like that, because a lot of times they'll know the families, they'll know some of the issues that you might be having. So the overwhelming piece of this was when you don't really have the power that an administrator has, how do you navigate as a teacher leader? So I thought it was great. I thought it gave me a new perspective. When I first read the first few chapters, I wasn't really sold on it. One other piece that they said is at that point, when you're a teacher leader, be the good cop. There'll be times where you have to be a bad cop, but without the real power, if you can take that role, you'll have a lot more success. They gave a few sheets as well that would be pretty good. I have to scan them, but there's one with conflict resolution survey and a teamed goal agreement if you're resolving one that was pretty good. A student remediation checklist. There's a few good examples of things that I could really use from the back of the book in the appendix. But basically, that's it. How to be a great teacher leader. I enjoyed it. There will be pieces that I'll pull immediately for my current situation. And it was just an overall pretty good read. So I'm glad I did it. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me back and I'll be happy to answer them for you. So thank you much. And I appreciate you letting me do this afterwards. So have a great day.